Good morning, fifth graders. Today we are starting our new unit and it is on adding and subtracting decimals. We are on page 187. Okay, what you need to know is Swan will teach a lot of different strategies for adding and subtracting decimals. I'm only going to teach you one strategy. So we're going to do a lot of notes in our spiral today, and I need you to make sure that everything that I write, you write down as well. Okay, so our objective today is, today I will learn to add decimals. Today I will learn to add decimals. Okay, so the strategy that they originally were going to teach you is adding using base 10 blocks and pictures. We are not going to do that. So let's just put a big cross on that. We are not going to be doing that. We're just going to actually be learning the algorithm for adding decimals. So I do have some steps for you, and since they didn't leave room for us, we're going to actually take our steps on page 188 where we have a lot of extra room. Okay, so we're going to write here on the top of page 188, steps. Okay, so our first step is we're going to add a decimal to the end if needed. Okay, I'm going to explain what that means. And remember, if you need to ever pause to get caught up. But if you have a problem and you have one of your add-ins that does not have a decimal, such as 390, you have to add the decimal to the end. 394, is equal to 394 with the decimal at the end. Those are equal. I didn't change the value by doing that. If you had instead added the decimal in the middle, look what you changed the value to. You used to have 394, now you have 39 wholes and 4/10. So think about if that was money, how different that is. What if you put it behind the 3 instead? Would that be allowed? Is 394 the same as 3 wholes and 94 hundredths? No. What if someone put it in the front by accident? Is 394 the same as decimal 394? No. Here I don't have any wholes. So if there's not a decimal in one of your add-ins, you only add it to the end. We always add it to the end because you don't change the value by doing that. Okay, so that's going to be our first step. If we have an add-in that doesn't have a decimal, we put the decimal on the end. Okay, our second step is we are going to set up problem vertically. Set up problem vertically, lining up your decimals. Okay, so that's our next step. Set up problem vertically, lining up your decimals. Vertically is up, down. That's what that means. So we're going to set up your problem vertically, lining up your decimals. Okay, our next step is we're going to add zeros, which would look like this, to create a box. And I kind of put box in quotation marks because it's not going to be an actual box. It's just going to be like visually we could see this box. So add zeros to create a box. Okay, our fourth step is we're just going to add. And then our final step is we are going to bring down the decimal. So we're gonna bring down the decimal, kind of like that. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, make sure you pause the video if you don't have all your steps, because this is the steps that we're going to be using pretty much all unit. So pause the video and make sure you have your steps, and then make sure you have all the way through step 5. When I do my examples, this is what you're going to hear me say, is these 5 steps as well. Okay, so I'm going to get started. Here is my first problem, and follow along with your steps to make sure I'm following them. Okay, my first problem is 2 67/100 plus 1 23/100 equals. Okay, my first step says add a decimal to the end if needed. Both my add-ins have decimals, so I don't need to do that. Okay, my second step says set up your problem vertically, lining up the decimals. So 2 67/100 plus 1 23/100. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, it is so important when you are doing this that your work is lined up very neatly. I apologize for that, friends. I had to get something. Okay, so it's really, really important that as you're doing this whole unit, that your work is lined up extremely neatly. Look how lined up I am. Okay, so make sure it's lined up like that. Okay, so that was step 2. I set up my problem vertically, lining up my decimals. Step 3 says add zeros to create a box. I don't really need to do that because if you look, I already have kind of this box created. That's what I mean by a box. I could already draw a nice rectangle. So I don't need to add any zeros this time. Then step 4 says to add. 7 plus 3 is 10. 1 plus 6 is 7 plus 2 is 9. 2 plus 1 is 3. And then my final step is bring down the decimal. So my answer is 3 90/100, which is actually the same as 3 9/10. So either of those would work on a test. Okay, let's look at my next problem. Is a word problem, and it says 2 swimmers entered into a competition. One swimmer's score is 3 75/100 and the other swimmer's score is 2 81/100. What is the combined score of the 2 swimmers? Okay, so when they ask what is the combined score, that makes it an addition problem. So my equation or expression is 3 75/100 plus 2 81/100. Okay, now if I look at these, what I notice is they both have decimals, so I don't need to do step 1. Step 2 says set up my problem vertically, making sure to line up the decimals. And notice again, everything else should be nicely lined up. That's going to be the thing that will keep you from making mistakes. Step 3 says add zeros if needed to kind of create this box, but I don't need to add them. Okay, step 4 says to add. So 5 plus 1 is 6. 7 plus 8 is 15. 1 plus 3 is 4 plus 2 is 6. And I get 6 56/100 is, oh, I apologize, ladies and gentlemen. 6 56/100 is my answer. Okay, let's try some together. We are on page 189. If you can turn to page 189. Okay. So here is our first one on page 189. It says 1 52/100 plus 0 46/10. Okay, what do I notice first? They both have a decimal, so I don't need to do step 1. So let's get right into step 2, which says set up our problem vertically, lining up the decimal. So 1 52/100 plus 0 46/10. Okay, step 3 says add a 0 if we need to create kind of that imaginary box, but we don't need to. And then step 4 says let's just add. So 2 plus 6 is 8, 5 plus 4 is 9, 1 plus 0 is 1. And our final step is bring down the decimal. So our sum is 1 and 98 hundredths. Okay, let's look at our next one. It says, Kathy bought fruit at the farmer's market. She saw strawberries for $1.35 a pound and cherries for 85 cents a pound. If she wants to buy a pound of each fruit, how much money will she need to buy the fruit? Okay, so if she's going to buy one of each is what they're telling us. So our expression is 1 and 35 hundredths plus 85 hundredths. Okay, so they both have a decimal, so we can skip step 1. And we can go to step 2 and set up our problem vertically. Okay, step 3 says add zeros to make this box, but we can skip that step also. Step 4 says let's add. 5 plus 5 is 10. 1 plus 3 is 4, plus 8 is 12. 1 plus 1 is 2, plus 0 is 2. And step 5 is bring down your decimal. So she would be spending $2.20 if she wanted to buy a pound of cherries and a pound of strawberries. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I want to do one more with you today, and it's in a different lesson. If you could turn your page, your book, all the way to page 198, we're going to do one more. On page 198, I want to do number 100, 1 on 198. Okay, so step 1 says, make sure, add a decimal to the end if needed. Both of our add-ins have decimals. Step 2 says, set up your problem vertically, lining up your decimal. Okay, and step 3, which we haven't had to do, says add zeros to create a box. Well, look it. If I was to trace this, am I really going to get a box, or would I get this weird shape? This one's kind of missing. So I wanted to show you that that's what I mean. If there's an empty spot missing, add a 0. And when I add a 0, I like to add like an X with it. Okay, step 4 says let's just add then. 3 plus 0 is 3. 2 plus 7 is 9. 2 plus 4 is 6. And our final step says, bring down our decimal. So it's 6 and 93 hundredths. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, have a great day. Bye-bye.